Gender and Sexuality in Role-Playing Games, a reading by Arne Schroeder. Arne Schroeder's reading discusses the general female role in role-playing games, which should be pretty obvious thanks to the title. Not only does the reading cover women who play games, but it also gives us a general overview of the role of women in games. The author, however, starts off with talking about narratives. The author states that in the field of game studies, discussions have occurred around whether games should be treated as narratives, Murray 2007, or instead a system of rules that define winning or losing the game, Frasker 1999, paragraph 2, page 241. Of course, role-playing games often consist of multiple storylines, where there is one main story that runs throughout, and a multitude of miniature narratives that are there to either help push it along, explain some things that may not come up in the main story, or to even give the player a break and let them do something else. A good example of this kind of game would be the GTA series. One story runs throughout the whole game, but there are often side missions that have nothing to do whatsoever with the story. Take GTA 4 for example. There are lots of side quests if you get bored, and there is a break within the story. You can do vigilante missions, firefighter missions, etc., and although they link onto your total completion of the game, they are not actually part of the main storyline at all. So my first question is, have you ever played any games where this has occurred? And if so, which one? The author then moves on to addressing an analysis by Sarah Grimes, which she bases around 3 questions. Apparently, Grimes refers to the feminist film theory for her analysis, but the author Schroeder thinks that this may be problematic due to films not being the same as games. However, due to various similarities such as the use of a narrative, the author thinks that it is not all a waste of time. These are the 3 questions she uses to base her analysis on. Question number 1. To what extent are female characters identified as part of the game world and as living beings, and how are they involved in quest and narrative? How are these characters portrayed? Question number 2. Does the characterization of the avatar challenge hegemonic concepts of masculinity? Question number 3. Are issues of sexual desire part of the game world? If so, how are they displayed? Paragraph 4, page 241. The analyst uses a variety of aspects within the game to answer these questions. These include scanning all the dialogue that is said throughout the game and going on the internet to read through walkthroughs and fan sites. The author goes on to saying that how there are different forms of feminism known as second-wave feminism and third-wave feminism. Second-wave feminism focuses on oppressive forces in society which cause subordination and discrimination of the female sex. In media studies, Laura Mulvey described how sexualized portrayals of women in cinema are constructed for a male gaze, a voyeuristic perspective of viewing she calls scopophilia. Paragraph 2, page 242. This means that second-wave feminism is found in a society where there are certain rules within the society that oppress or discriminate the female sex. Although thanks to present circumstances women are almost free to do as much as a male, there are of course still some societies that do not let women do as they please due to various reasons. A very interesting example would be when last year some of us went to the Japanese Arts Festival in Richmond for some research, and there was a stage show. Funnily enough, the organizer was Japanese. Anyway, during her demonstration of how to go on a yukata correctly, she suddenly moved on to how men were allowed to do things that women were not, and how they always stayed at home making tea and doing the housework in Japan. This was interesting seeing as she was approximately middle-aged, and it could have also been the effect of the specific area she was a resident in, or, of course, the effect of the time. This shows how dramatically things have changed over the past few years concerning feminism. So my second question to you is, have you ever heard anyone saying that's a girl's job? Third-wave feminism and the queer theory discuss sex and how it is socially and medically used whilst meeting social expectations. Judith Butler states that heterosexuality is a natural fact. Butler refers to homosexuality as having a social taboo. She refers to them being outside of the matrix of intelligibility. Playing a video game is grounded on repetitive actions, as a player is being trained to act in a specific way in a game world that follows predetermined rules. As a result, media products play a significant role in the reproduction of social hierarchies and norms by becoming a point of reference for the player. Although any actions performed on the screen are excluded from real life and are in one way outside it, they induce some emotions in the subject and thus constitute a part of the subject's life experience. Paragraph 3, page 242. Firstly, sorry for the long quote, but in truth I find this one uniquely interesting and I must say that I entirely agree with it. To put it bluntly, the author is saying that the experiences that one can obtain from unreal media or interaction, such as video games, can often influence our decisions in real life to realistic circumstances with realistic consequences. Of course, they are not always negative, but then again, they are not always positive. Narratives and game worlds. For the next section, the author talks solely about a series of games for PC called Gothic. This is an RPG or role-playing game based in a medieval world where the player takes on the role of a male hero to try and save the world or whatnot. Personally, I haven't played the game, so I have no idea what it's like. The game itself is made by German developers Piranha Bytes, and the author describes them as an all-male company later on in the reading. Browsing through the reading, the game seems to be what you would expect of an RPG, but there is a point that the Schroeder picks up from the game. That is the fact that the player does not have the choice of choosing whether they would like to play a female character or not. I don't really want to go into too much detail about the game itself because I think the author didn't compare it to other RPGs, and we can't obviously judge all RPGs from one example. Female stereotypes. The author picks up that there are hardly any in Gothic. Schroeder says that most characters are men, and she also mentions that females are underrepresented in most computer games. This of course is not true, or I should say not true anymore. If anyone's played Golden Axe where there is a female character, that is one of the main characters of the game. Streets of Rage where a female called Blaze can also be chosen to play through. Super Mario Bros. Where one of the most important roles is of the princess that occasionally finds herself in trouble, or even The Legend of Zelda which has a similar story. And then of course with recent games such as Heavenly Sword, Mirror's Edge and Bayonetta, where there is no choice of playing a male character, I'm sure that you would also disagree. Again, this links back to social and cultural oppression, or second wave feminism as the author calls it. Going back to Gothic, the author gives more detailed statistics of things like how many female characters there are in the game, and about how it is not possible to talk to female characters because you are not allowed to talk to them. She also refers to the animation of the females and the general roles being highly stereotypical. They fan their leaders, as in the case of Natalia and Seraphia, see figure 1, or sweep the ground of the castle, Syra, figure 2. Valia takes a daily bath on the upper floor of the castle, and is the only character in the game that is shown completely naked, obviously constructed for the voyeuristic gaze of the player. She also describes the actions and scripting being very poor, but seeing as there is no comparison between the female and male characters and how the scripting differs, I can only assume that the author is being slightly biased. Of course, it could just be the developers being lazy on their part. The author goes on to saying how the general roles of the female characters improve and how they are also